Great. My name is Martin Greenwood. I'm the Director of the Centre for a Better Canberra here at UC, as well as looking after the university's civic engagement, which is sort of partly our community function. I don't really need to say much else other than we're very keen as the University of Canberra to be the university for Canberra and absolutely be directly integrated in everything that we do with the broader Canberra community. Our connected strategy, our 10-year plan is all about really taking that place as the city's university and being here to deliver for the Canberra community. But that's all I need to say. I will hand over to Hugh Howarth, who is the Director of Campus Planning and Estates.
Thanks, Martin. Yes, hello everyone, those in the room and online. So my name's Hugh Howarth. I'm the Director of Property and Development for the University of Canberra. Pretty close. They change titles a lot around the university. Look, I've got a quick slideshow. I think it's about 20 slides, so I'll try and get through it and give people an opportunity to ask questions. Initially, we start all of these with an acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where we meet, which for us is the Bruce campus, the Ngunnawal people, and any other First Nation people. We welcome them to the room in the university. So UC Masterplan, I guess, as a bit of background, I've been with the university for 4.5 years. Starting here in 2019. The master plan was an existing document, a 2012 based document, which gave a vision for the campus. We revisited the master plan probably about 2018. We decided it needed a refresh. So they went on a journey to essentially update it, modernise it. It was quite an exercise for the university. It was much bigger exercise for probably an institution of this size and complexity than a lot of other institutions I've worked in. The overlay of academic research, being a property owner in Canberra, added a lot of complexities to this particular master plan. Why do we use it? Ultimately, the master plan should pull together our sort of diverse needs and requirements for the next 20 years. The previous master plan had done a good job at that, but we've had changes in senior leadership that required a reflection on what we were doing. So, our drivers, I guess, trying to think about what we were trying to achieve with the master plan during the initial consultation, which was quite broad. We came up with a set of drivers, so 6 drivers. Sorry, I'm trying to talk at this microphone, but we have the Canberra's University, which Martin touched on. We are a civic institution within Canberra. I myself studied here. I did my undergrad here, so I have appreciation for how it's changed over the years. I used to come here when it was free parking and abundance of a sea of parking lots and cheap coffee. You come in, do your degree, and you get out. So, and I've seen it evolve. So it's sort of embedded. We teach most of the teachers in Canberra. We teach most of the nurses in Canberra. We're sort of embedded in that sort of culture of Canberra. The other driver that was apparent was a bush setting. When we consulted widely, a combination of students and stakeholders commented how different the university was. It's sort of been created over time. It's a very bush-focused campus. There's lots of trees, lots of urban open space. So we wanted to preserve that. I do orientation sometimes for staff, and I get these questions, can I pat the kangaroos? And I mean, I guess out of interest, I don't encourage it. Obviously you don't, but you know, you're in that environment where people are walking out of the student accommodation or out of a class and walking from one class to the other and actually seeing kangaroos grazing on the grass. So that's been an important part of our university. Experiential learning. This was an important factor for university. We try to create job-ready graduates, and that's experience. So we teach the understanding of, say, nursing, but we have a lot of labs, laboratories, and other training facilities where we actually apply that. So a lot of our focus isn't really traditional classrooms. It's a blend of traditional classrooms and practical spaces that we apply knowledge in. Indigenous UC, so there's strong Indigenous history within this institution, and as we undertook that, we realised there's important things about this institution. The vistas from hills to hills are very important to the traditional custodians. So we tried to preserve sort of line of sight from Gossan Hill down through the hill, which was used as wayfinding. Sustainable UC is a particular driver, and I don't say that lightly. We have 50-year-old buildings that have never really been built with sustainability in mind. So we're trying to create a plan that we acknowledge will take some time, but as we build new buildings, as we reinvest in the campus, we're trying to do it in a sustainable way while still working with, I guess, the palette of 40 or 50-year-old structures. And a vibrant UC community, I was reminded multiple times, and we're just near the refectory over there, how this is a music venue. There's a lot of culture here about entertainment, activation, music. And it's not just really university, it's a little bit about the spirit of a university and people coming together, gathering, learning and going on a bit of a journey. So these are our drivers that we've tried to preserve or emphasise within the master plan, which ultimately is a large-scale built form map for us. Connected to Canberra. So part of this was we acknowledged our connections, both within Belconnen and through Canberra. So we're a civic context, we should talk about civic institution. We have environmental links through the nature, particularly Black Mountain, Gossan Hill, right through to Lawson. We're a learning corridor. So when you actually draw a line from the sort of airport through, we sit on this corridor of learning ANU, and you see the connections with Radford, AIS. I'd argue we're probably a learning and, I guess, institutional corridor as well as a lot of government institutions. So we developed a master plan framework to go through. Part of that framework is we basically divided the university vision into these 4 areas, and we had a series of themes within this area. So you can see the innovation, learning and research, which is core to what we do. Then the civic university of all ages, then connections, and our bush landscape. And then we put elements in there to try and understand what we like to achieve. So we sort of got little mini plans for those little slices of the pie. Slides are a bit small here, so we might see if we can change this a touch. I'm happy to just move to this.
I don't think they can see that at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, people online, we're just changing this to give a bigger picture in the room. Yeah, well, I don't need the notes. So hopefully everyone online can see we're up to master plan framework. So as I said, each slice of the pie was sort of something where we'd need to develop a strategy or a plan. So parking and loading, public transport, we have to develop a plan over time for these sorts of things. Right through to the campus life. How do we activate the campus? What does campus life mean? You can see some of the learning pieces there. Engagement, partnerships and industry. So that's an important aspect about how we apply the learning. So we're trying to engage with partners on our campus so that people can learn in the classroom and then go into a simulated environment, or they can actually go into a real-time environment that's a working, operating Canberra business. And they take work integrated learning students, for example. So one theme here, innovation, teaching, learning and research, which is obviously core to a university, connected learning. So we have a distinctive architectural landscape within the university that we're trying to encourage. We don't necessarily want a cookie cutter approach to the buildings we build. We want to have a bit of a unique feel for the buildings that we build and how they apply to pedagogy and the learning practices that we undertake at the university. That will be linked with learning corridors. We also had flexible learning and workplace. So, arguably those big lecture theatres that you saw with 400 or 500 people learning over time have changed. And now we look for flat floor, flexible rooms that can cater for groups of 40 or 50 up to 200 and a more of an interactive way of doing lectures, for example. And similar with workplace, you know, open plan, COVID was a big shift. Interestingly, we delivered this in 2020 just prior to COVID, and the actual plan kind of sat on the shelf for a few years. It was kind of difficult to engage with industry to actually put a lot of these projects together. But you know, the flexible workplace is something that the university's constantly moving towards. And then engagement, partnership, and industry. So we looked at how do we actually put property solutions on the ground for our partners in industry, whether they be healthcare, sporting, tech, or something like that. And you see that with the hospital. I mean, that's a good example. UCH Rehab Hospital, that was a partnership with us and ACT government. And you go down there and we've got a couple of 1,000 square metres of offices down there, and we've got training and simulation, and where a lot of the nursing education, allied health education happens down there as part of a partnership. Learning neighbourhoods. So you'll see from the map that the master plan basically produced neighbourhoods. Now, the old master plan talked about precincts. Neighbourhoods was just kind of a different spin on it, but essentially we divided the campus up into zones, if you will, with a targeted sort of use. Within the centre is zone 1, which is the blue one, which is what we call core. So this is essentially the university. This is teaching, learning, research spaces. This is sort of retail, the refectory, grab and go food, lecture theatres, labs, everything you associate with the university. And then as you look around the edge, if I go sort of clockwise up to the top right of your screen is a legend number 2. So that's a health area. That reinforces the future vision for that, which is sort of anchored with the health hub, what we call the health hub on that corner, which is the Ochre, the super clinic. Over time, those ovals over there will get converted into properties that we would partner with other healthcare providers and deliver applied industry outcomes. Going counterclockwise, and we look at area 3, which is just above it, so at the top of the screen. So that's obviously got the existing hospital, and it's got a multi-deck car park. That's also a health neighbourhood called Northwest Health. Out of interest, we're currently working through a process now to find a preferred aged care partner and retirement living partner who we hope will deliver a large aged care facility and retirement living on that side of the campus. No secret, we had tried to do this with another aged care provider a few years ago, and that provider and us weren't able to get the project to work for various reasons. So we're looking for another partner, and that's in the market. We're hoping that we have a landing on that midway through this year. And I did notice there was a question about housing diversity in the agenda, and I guess you'll see when we talk about the campus, there's actually been diversity in use across the campus. Whether it's the peak development or whether it's that, we've sort of tried to think about ways in which we provide different services as the university or through a partner. So going further back, I don't know why it moves that way, but anyway, there's a green area on the side of the map. That's the sports area. So that's anchored right now with the Brumbies building 29. So that was a partnership from 2014 where we brought the Brumbies on campus as a partner. We've earmarked that for future sports facilities and sports partnerships. That's probably a longer term goal. We actually have to reconfigure a few ovals down there, and sport isn't necessarily associated with large facilities demand, particularly where it's not funded by government. There's not a lot of people out there wanting to spend lots of money on community sports associations at this point. Number 5, which is at the bottom right, it's an enterprise neighbourhood. That's future tech, health, and other sort of more technology-based partnerships. And that's probably something that's on our sort of medium-term radar, is looking for those partners. But what's made it a little bit more complex is you'll observe that there's sort of a light rail, that people might have seen this before, the light rail through Bruce campus. You know, trying to plan a campus around a light rail running along the fringe of your campus or through your campus adds a lot of complexity about how we go about that. And we're largely reliant on probably the light rail strategy for Belconnen and Bruce, and where the government decided to take that. Item 6, or Legend 6, which is next to 5, is a future residential development option that's been provided to Peat. So Peat Limited will be developing 1,600 dwellings on our campus on their own site, and subject to various conditions. They've got an option to develop further properties down there, probably in 5 to 10 years by the time the housing supply or demand catches up, I guess. 7 there in the middle, which is the blue neighbourhood, is currently student accommodation, which I thought interesting. It was in the news this morning about student accommodation and that support, and I think the Chief Minister acknowledged that we've got land. True, we've got that large block of land there, which is currently under an arrangement for student accommodation. We haven't really looked at that yet. The relationship with the provider means that we're probably putting that in the 10-year horizon in terms of master planning that spot. But 2,000 or 3,000 by the time you look at the new and the old spaces available for student accommodation. And then Legend 8 above that is the University Park. So this is a park that we've been working on. We've just completed a sort of an in-house competition, design competition for that, and we'll be appointing someone to do the master planning of that. And we see that as a great opportunity to engage with community about what a university park for a civic institution looks like and how we roll out a development program. And then item 9 above it is the Peat deal. So you've seen in the news 1,629 dwellings and a bit of non-residential space over there. I believe they'll be putting a development application in the next few months to get that going. And we've seen some preliminary plans that look quite good. They're targeting some high sustainability ratings, high energy ratings and bits and pieces, and a combination of terraces and apartments over time. So that will be an interesting thing to roll out and work collaboratively with Peat on. Theme 2 is civic university for all ages. So we touched on the Indigenous and the campus life, health and sport, and campus housing. So this is a bit of the student life here. We're trying to activate the campus. We do have concerts here. It brings life. We do have retail here. It brings life to the campus. But, nights like tonight, it's cold. It's hard to get activation on our campus, and we would like to address that. And a lot of that is by bringing in additional partners on the campus to activate and bring up the population. Campus housing, again, I touched on it before. We're trying to progress aged care. We're trying to progress retirement living. We have student accommodation, which is traditional student accommodation for postgrad and maybe some undergrad. We have made an attempt to put together proposals to do build to rent affordable. Unfortunately, the way they work or the way they stack up has been challenging for the university, but we'll continue to look at that. And some of that's around key worker housing and affordability for postgrad. So a bit of diversity generally across the campus. And those projects are subject to viability testing. I think we've got tech issues. Yeah, we've got the red line around it. So I might just quickly jump back a couple of slides if we can, just so everyone's. So this was the neighbourhoods that we just talked about. Apologies if that wasn't shown on the screen. So as you can see, hopefully my cursor, these areas are broken down by colour. And I think we'll be happy to share this presentation anyway. I don't think there's anything controversial on this, so people can have a look. Campus life, this is the slide we were talking about with the campus housing and a diverse sort of housing, but we do aim over time to have, we have a philosophy called the educated life, which is that the campus is part of a learning system from when you're very young to when you're slightly older. That's part of the strategy around, we've got childcare facilities here, we've got relationships with the University of Canberra College, we have the university itself that does both undergrad and postgrad at all ages. We're looking at aged care and retirement living, so it should be a place people connect with for their entire life if they choose. Housing is a bit like that. We're trying to think about ways to encourage housing and activation on our campus. Culturally safe, visible places. This talks a little bit about the Hill, so University Hill and the aspects from the Hill, but we've tried to balance the way we've modelled the buildings and the neighbourhoods to give good visual corridors through the campus and encourage walks around the campus. Not a lot to say more than how do you stitch neighbourhoods together? Well, we've tried to do it through walking. So we have about 4 or 5 loops, an ecology loop, a health loop, various other loops that should connect all of our individual components. So this is another look at arts, culture and retail. So a lot of it's focused in the centre, the core of our university, but then we use the loops or the walks to link that around the campus. Outward looking and connected. So we've put a lot of effort into identifying interfaces and addresses. So we're doing a current project now which talks about our entries. My predecessor had a great joke that we had this great product that we built in the middle and then surrounded it with a moat of trees and car parks, so you don't know we're here. Now, the trees are quite cool, like the way they've been developed. But yes, you know, some people drive past the campus and don't actually know that there's a modern university behind here. And what we want to do is work on our edges to identify ourselves as a Canberra's university. Pedestrian and cycling, we're getting better at working out how that links. We still have to work around the campus. We have a lot of level changes, and over time we need to adapt and improve that sort of access. Street character, we're putting in place development controls to ensure that we have a consistent approach to the way our streets work, the widths, the way we do the facades, how we activate that. Public transport, I believe, and don't quote me, that I think the bus stop on College Street, I believe, is the most used, one of the most used in Canberra. And so we want to continue that. We want to try and think about how buses interact with our campus and how we encourage that. We have quite an ambitious modal shift for sustainability goals. We actually do want to push away from fossil fuel cars, and we'll be looking at ways to do that. The difficulty for a university like ours in master planning, that is, a lot of our students don't have access to EVs and various other things. So we don't want to limit access by making it hard to get here. We just need to understand how we pull those levers, which touches on parking and loading. So here's the public transport. Core of that was really looking at a light rail route through the campus, which would bring that close to the centre of the campus and the population, including the hospital. Again, that's a difficult thing to plan when the planning for the light rail is still in its infancy for Belconnen. But either way, we would still like to encourage a rapid bus or something through the campus rather than skirting the edges of our campus. Pedestrian cycle network, it's pretty solid. So we've got a lot there to link, and it'll be done through these main loops. Bush setting, fascinating discussion when you're doing a master plan for an institution like this that could go a lot more dense. To be candid, we could have put bigger buildings in, we could have put thinner roads in, but in consultation with the stakeholders, there was really a strong theme to retain that bush character. So the actual density of the campus is relatively low in terms of building density, with a focus on the urban links and the bush character instead. So you see that with the University Park and the Hill and the Ecology Walk and all of these things. Natural systems is an interesting one. When you have a Faculty of Science and Technology that do a lot of water and ecology studies, it is a bit of an opportunity to be a living lab and test out some research on our campus. Landscape uses, again, we've got Faculty of Arts and Design, so we have landscape architecture that sits within the university, and we've been engaging with the landscape people to think about the way we do things, which is quite interesting too, because they'll come to me and say things like we should try mowing a couple of mil higher, a couple of mil lower the grass and then see what that actually does. And I'd never thought much of it until they wanted to study it. And then the bush landscape character, which we talked about. Green links, so you can see here we've preserved a lot of green links, particularly Gossan Hill down through the hill over near our student accommodation and over to the University Hill and then through to Lawson. Ecologically, we've got some ecological values on the University Hill that are protected or would be protected, but elsewhere we actually don't have a lot. This is a bit of an artist's impression of the campus looking over to Lake Ginninderra. So as you can see, we've got a fair bit of green in there. We've got some good road access and we've maintained some sensible massing on the buildings. Campus core neighbourhood, we've got a couple of projects here. Main one's the Indoor Sports Centre, which you've possibly heard about with Sports Hub 2, which is a proposal to do an indoor sports centre that's community-centric, but also has high-performance sport research and other things. We've got a new science facility. We'd be looking at refurbishing our main building 1, which we're in today, building 5 and building 8, which is the library. Over time, we will look at a new learning commons and chancellery over to the south of the core. And then obviously just what's investment. I mean, in short term, we're really looking at the sports centre and refurbishing buildings 1, 5 and 8 is our immediate approach. This is a little bit of just a concept of the concourse with some all-weather treatment. So that looks over our hub. You're looking straight at the library. And as you can see from the image, we've tried to activate that ground floor of the library. The challenge with a lot of these buildings over time, they've closed down, they've frosted windows for other reasons, and you actually don't know what's going on. And we're trying to encourage that people can see and see people doing experiments and learning and activating the space. Campus West, which is Campus Community South. So this is looking over at the student accommodation and the University Park. So we'll be looking at making more of an entry statement over on College Street. And then the University Park will be a strong spine link through to Aikman Drive and the lake. Again, retaining a lot of green space in there, but we do need to work on accessibility and gradients and security and really improving the amenity of that park. This is Belconnen Boulevard as a bit of an image looking from Aikman Drive up the campus, so looking to the east. As you can see, we want a very active park. Sports Centre, so we've got the Sports Hub 2 in the middle, we've got the Sports Walk, we're retaining at least 5 rectangle pitches. We have looked at a compact primary school on the campus and we've been talking to government about what that might look like in the long term. So again, it comes back to the educated life philosophy and a primary school engaging with our Faculty of Education within a university context over time. This would be the new Gateway building off College Street. So it wouldn't be abutting College Street. It would be in the campus a little bit on the edge of the core with the nominal sort of alignment for light rail. Campus Community North. So we're sort of looking over here at the hospital, which is up the top there. To the left of the hospital on your screen would be the Pete development. When this was done, we had some initial concepts from Pete. I believe they've sort of refined them now and you'll see more of that as they issue the various stage development applications. The focus at the moment is that research partnership facilities over there at the top of the screen, which would sort of fill in from the car park over to Health Hub. And that is essentially it. This is the team that worked on that. So happy to answer any questions for the master plan. I'll stop sharing. And I'll turn on, there we go, we've got the camera. So let me have a look at the chat. So we haven't got anything in the chat at the moment. Happy to answer questions, either hand up or just yell something out.
Thank you. I'm wondering about your comments about public transport, because it's a laudable goal that we all want, but for most developments, it's out of our control.
Yep.
How do you plan to leverage, encourage, cajole that? I mean, it just seems bizarre to me that you say the College Street bus stop is the busiest bus stop in Canberra, and yet it's probably 300 metres away from the centre of the university. And I'm thinking, why on earth doesn't the bus come in and back out again?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. Over the years, the actual public transport's been pushed to the edges by different, because the view about a public-private. We do bring buses in, but because of the nature of the rapid buses, that they tend to go along the periphery. Something we're looking to encourage that, for example, would be strengthening the actual linkage from the bus stop on College through to the core. So improving the all-weather access. Right now, you can't walk from College Street to the campus without undercover. So we'll look to try and cover that. We'll widen the paths, we'll increase lighting, and we'll encourage that. Ultimately, we would like to get to the point where we know whether it's a light rail or not. And either way, we'll try and plan an alignment through the campus and work with TCCS, hopefully, to try and bring those buses through. We've also looked at initiatives over time, such as a autonomous vehicle around the campus that can pick up and drop off. So we're looking at these things. Yeah, we've got to explore that. I think the challenges has been. Yeah, and I think that's a bit of it. It's a bit, the architect that did our master plan was a Melbourne architect, which is why they did that. I think from their perspective, the issue is a bit of a change management approach with how they manage, people, buses and cars in the same alignment. And I think it can all be done. I guess it depends on timing and priorities for government, but either way, we'll try and bleed the transport into our campus and then improve those links.
Thanks, Al. There's a couple more questions coming up on the chat, which is probably a good way to get your questions in. There's one up here from Margaret, how you're planning for the climate crisis with all that includes, and how you're managing the flora and fauna, particularly where biodiversity values are so high. Obviously, you've got a lot of the faculties on campus, which have got to do with these things, landscaping and sustainability. So how are you intending to type students and research into that as well?
Yeah, look, the part of, say, the park is the team that's actually going to work on the park will engage with SciTech, with Science and Technology faculty, and the ecologists in there, and they will work at what values need to be preserved within there. So ultimately, we'll develop a biodiversity kind of strategy for most of our projects. The sustainability, how are we planning for that? It's probably a combination of strategies. The university's currently finalising its sustainability strategy, and then that's going to kick out a bunch of requirements around individual plans that we'll produce this year. The master plan had some targets, but we do need to work on those. Again, we have quite an old campus, 50 years old, and you've got to sort of manage adaptive reuse and replacement of these things carefully over time, because we just simply don't have the capital to make sweeping changes that's necessary. So by flora and fauna, I think we're probably one of the more likely universities to protect that, or institutions, given our faculty interests in that. The trees, I wouldn't say they're turned into wood chips myself. I think we need to take an objective look at what trees are of value, what trees need to be retained. I think we will actually end up planting more trees on our campus over time. I just think the challenge is people have put trees in locations that in hindsight probably didn't work. And all they've done is cause issues. Currently we compete with SEPTED or safety and environment issues where people walk from A to B and there's trees obscuring views, and we have to manage that with security and lighting and bits and pieces. So there's a lot of thought that goes into how we lay out the trees. Yeah, how important is it to encourage public transport? Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we have circa 2,000 car parking, so 2,000 to 3,000 car parking spots on our campus. And our aim is to sustain that, hold that, and still grow our density without actually expanding our car parking any more than necessary. But again, it does prove challenging for us, where you might have students that don't have a lot of money or aren't in an environment where public transport can work for them. So we're trying to figure out that balance over time. Yes, we do have plans to integrate solar panels. We are currently out, or we're about to go out to tender for about 700 kilowatts worth of solar panels across about 8 buildings. We had hoped that would move quicker. We did have plans for 2 megawatts. Unfortunately, just with the nature of it, it's taken, you run into complexities when you go to put solar panels on a university like this. You need a certain class of builder, and it's not a simple thing, but we will have solar on our roofs within the next 18 months.
My name's Mark. I recall that UC has a little shop front in the city on City Walk, which occasionally has some, I think exhibits from students and research and such. Are there any plans to expand that or do more with that?
Not really. I think over time we've talked about, should a business school from the University of Canberra have a presence in the city? I haven't heard anything myself. I think we've got a lot to offer on the campus. That doesn't say that a faculty, we've recently done something with Sydney around nursing. We have offices in Melbourne. So I think if the opportunity arose to provide a service in the city that would benefit Canberrans, we'd probably do it. But the challenge there is, to teach something complex in the city requires a fairly large commitment.
Mostly from the perspective of engaging with the community, and we did some good stuff on their Uncharted Territory Festival last year with some robotics exhibitions. So yeah, that space will keep being used for different things, and we also have some things in Hague Park and stuff. So there is certainly things happening on that end, maybe not from the teaching and research perspective, but from a community engagement perspective for sure.
Good question on the gas. Will new buildings be all electric? Yes, we have no intention of building any new gas assets. I would acknowledge that we do have a lot of legacy gas assets here. That for us as a university, we need to quantify that. We're trying to align ourselves with ACT government sort of policy around getting rid of gas. For us, there's structural implications, like when you go to remove a gas plant and put an electric plant in, a lot of the time the roofs and various other things need a lot of work. So it's quite a complex exercise. I think we'll have to phase our gas outage over the 10-year sort of period as these things fail. We'll be replacing with full electric.
Thanks.
With the relationship with Pete and also your faculties of architecture and landscape design, etc., what sort of influence do you think the university will have on the ultimate design of the residential? And are you seeing any goals like carbon neutral, sustainability, those sort of things with Pete?
I think we're working collaboratively with Pete. I guess the nature of the relationship changed, if I'm really open. We had more of a joint venture relationship in the early days, and it was difficult to execute. We changed the nature of the deal, and we did a subdivision, and we put in certain controls in addition to the statutory controls to guide Pete. My chats with the team is they are very enthusiastic about thinking outside the box. But strictly speaking, the university doesn't have any actual, wouldn't say leverage, but control over that. We do have a collaboration arrangement with Pete, which it will look at design. It'll look at construction and project management. And say the university park's been an interesting exercise because we actually had Pete involved in part of that competition, and they'll be involved in helping us mould the park, given it's sort of their neighbourhood. So I think there'll still be plenty of opportunity. I think parking is a good example where we will look to work with Pete about how do you put that parking on the ground in a residential context that we can share as a university. But equally, from what I've seen, I think that they're trying to aim for a pretty sort of advanced sort of residential typology. I don't see them sort of doing a cookie cutter. FAD will be involved. I think the collaboration's sort of kicked off now, and then our architecture students, and I know we've already seen students draw things and Pete get it and go, actually, that's pretty good. I'm going to incorporate that. But ultimately, they'll hire their own consultant team and take our feedback on board.
I think originally, when you were doing the first part of the deal, there was some arrangement where Pete would fund some academic positions. Is that still part of the deal?
Yeah, there's still a collaboration component where they are funding. So part of that is quite a clear objective around what Pete and the university are trying to achieve in research. But strictly speaking, though, sort of the deal was sliced up slightly differently commercially in the end. So it's the collaboration isn't really just focused on this development. It's probably more focused on collaborating on built form and other things generally and seeing what they can produce in benefits.
Great. Thanks very much for that, Howard. I think that we might wrap those questions up. I'm sure if anyone has further questions, you could send them into the NCCC site and we can put the pressure on Howard later on to answer a few questions. But let me say thank you very much for your time and your effort here. What we will do, thanks, Howard.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thanks for Uni of Canberra.
Hugh.
Hugh.